Good morning. Thank you for attending the Veterans Day ceremony. My name is Joe Oliveri. I'm the Veterans Grave Ceremonial Officer for the town. I welcome you all. I thank you all. Every year we come down and we do this ceremony, whether it be here at Woodlawn, to honor our veterans. And this year we're going to do the same with a few restrictions, but we're going to do the same. And I'd like to introduce Pete Jones for our invocation.
Uncover, uncover. Dear Lord, today we honor our veterans, worthy men and women who gave their best when they were called upon by their country. We pray that you bless them, Lord, for their unselfish service to preserve our country's heritage for all of us. Bless them abundantly for their sacrifices they made and their contributions to the American victories. We respect them, we thank them, we honor them, we are proud of them, and we pray that you will watch over these special people and bless them with peace and happiness. Amen. Cover. Sergeant at Arms.
Present. Arms.
The POW empty chair. The prisoner of war missing in action flag, which you see behind us here. The flag is present within every organization during their meetings and their ceremony. It's draped upon an empty chair in memory of those who left on a mission but never returned. More than 78,000 Americans are still unaccounted for from World War II. 8,100 from Korean conflict, 120 from the Cold War, 1,810 from Vietnam, and 3 from the Gulf War. These courageous Americans who dedicated their lives to preserving and protecting our freedom will never be forgotten. Those who have served and those currently serving in uniformed services of the United States are ever mindful that the sweetness of enduring peace has always been tainted by the bitterness of personal sacrifice. We are compelled to never forget that while we enjoy our daily pleasures, there are others who have endured and still may be enduring the agonies of pain, deprivation, and internment. The prisoner of war missing in action flag reminds us to continue to pledge for full accountability for those who have not returned. The American flag reminds us that there are many that have never returned and they have paid the supreme sacrifice to ensure our freedoms.
Folks, please rise. Face your flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Detail. Order.
At this time, I'd like to call Marine Corps veteran Larry Fitzmaurice to the podium, please.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, everyone. It's kind of a different approach this year with these masks on, and in the case of my mask, it's a good thing because that's the face that scares young children on Halloween. Some of us remember when this was called Armistice Day, and that was the significance of ringing that bell 11 times by Mr. Saunders, because the armistice was signed on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month after World War I. And today we have broadened the scope of this celebration to honor all veterans from any period of time. And we're here to pay tribute to all who have served honorably in the military, and also recognize that they are part of a dangerous occupation along with others such as police, fire, first responders, healthcare providers, sanitation workers, food service workers, and others exposed to the COVID virus and being subject to enemy conflict. They serve at risk for the sake of others. And by the way, and please excuse me for reading this. By the way, air crews shot down, ground forces captured, naval crews put adrift in a hostile sea and captured, didn't choose that fate. Many of us who were not subject to the losing of our lives or our freedom might offer thanks to those who did, and they did their best to keep us safe. As you know, we are all living in uncertain and difficult times these days, and like generations before us, are faced with our own insecurities, our own concerns, but we too will deal with them as others have, and we will prevail. Thank you all for being here. I would now like to introduce Wellesley Veteran Services Officer, newly appointed by the way, and congratulations, Nancy Blanchard, who still serves in the active Army Reserve, who will read a declaration or proclamation from Governor Baker.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's better.
Adapt and overcome, huh? Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Joe, for putting this together. My name is Sergeant First Class Nancy Blanchard. I served 20 years plus with the Army. I am the Deputy Director for the Western Suburban Veterans District, and I will read the proclamation speech by Governor Baker. Whereas, since the Commonwealth's colonial days, thousands of men and women have served our country in defense of freedom and liberty. And whereas on November 11th, 1918, the armistice was signed in the Forest of Campaign by the Allied nations and Germany, ending World War I, the war to end all wars, after 4 years of conflict. And whereas since that day, every November, people from around the nation have gathered to honor our veterans. And whereas there are approximately 388,000 veterans in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And whereas today we are reminded of the great sacrifices and contributions our veterans have made to our country. And whereas we honor and salute those who served our country throughout the generations with honor, patriotism, and courage. And whereas it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who served their country so that their dedication and sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. And whereas in November 2020, the world will commemorate the 102nd anniversary of the armistice that ended the fighting in World War I at 11 a.m. November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Now, therefore, I, well, not me, but Charles D. Governor Baker of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2020 to be Veterans Day. Signed, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Next, with the Veterans Day speech, will be John Durham. John.
Thank you very much. My name's John Durham. I served for 3 years during the war in Vietnam, mostly over in the Western Pacific on a couple of destroyers. I am very honored to be here today as part of this ceremony. I find when we talk about the history of Veterans Day, once upon a time called Armistice Day, that there's a lot of confusion between Veterans Day and Memorial Day, at least among the students I teach over here at Mass Bay. Most of you may be better informed, but Memorial Day started right after the Civil War in both the North and the South as a local observation and an opportunity to place flowers on the graves of those who had died in the Civil War. And since that war had cost approximately 700,000 American lives, there were many graves to be decorated both North and South. Interestingly, Decoration Day, as it was called even when I was young, way back when, did not become really Memorial Day until 1971, when Decoration Day became a national holiday rather than simply a state and local holiday. And then, of course, it was now celebrated on the last Monday of the month of May when there are plenty of flowers. Veterans Day has a somewhat different history. Veterans Day began, as I think you've picked up from our last two speakers, celebrating the armistice that ended the killing of the Great War, as it was then called, before we had to start numbering the Great Wars. And Armistice Day, 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, ended World War I. The first Armistice Day was celebrated exactly 1 year later and has been celebrated ever since, initially as a state and local holiday, just like Memorial Day. But in 1938, during Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency, it was changed to a national holiday, still called Armistice Day, still celebrating the end of the Great War. And it wasn't until 1954, under President Eisenhower, that we changed the name to Veterans Day so that we could honor the veterans, of course, of World War II and of the Korean War. And now Veterans Day basically exists to honor veterans of all wars. Interestingly, in 1971, 4 major American holidays were changed from their actual date to be floating Monday holidays to give us all a 3-day weekend. And while nobody objected to doing that to Columbus Day or Washington's birthday or Memorial Day, the World War I veterans, of whom there were many still alive at that time, were very upset. And within 3 years, that holiday was changed back to November 11th, which is why we are here today on Wednesday, November 11th, and not on Monday, November 9th, or any other day. So that day is very special, even though all the World War I veterans have since passed on. There is not a single World War I veteran alive anywhere on this planet, to the best of my knowledge, but we still honor the day of the armistice, November 11th, which is why we're all here. Let me just end, I think I've gone on too long, but I always like to end with Ronald Reagan's famous statement early in his presidency when he said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." And I would ask you to remember that today in honor of Veterans Day. Our next speaker is another Navy veteran, also a teacher, standing behind me, Ken Johnson.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Ken Johnson. I served as a Petty Officer 3rd Class in the United States Navy. I welcome you all here this morning. Thank you for attending. I'm going to be reading Who is a Veteran? Who is a veteran? You cannot tell who a veteran is just by looking. He or she is one of many patriotic Americans who served a tour of duty in the Army, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard, or Air Force. It could have been for 1, 2, or more years if they chose their career. Some veterans wear visible signs of their service: a missing limb, a jagged scar, a certain look in his or her eyes. Others may carry the evidence inside them: a pin holding a bone together, a piece of shrapnel buried in a leg, or perhaps another sort of inner steel, the soul's ally forged in the refinery of adversity. It also may be an event tattooed in the back of the mind, never to be discussed with another mortal. Except on special occasions, however, the men and women who have kept America safe wear no badges or emblems. You cannot tell who is a veteran just by looking. Just who is a veteran? He is the Marine who sludged through the mud of Guadalcanal, the sailor who manned the anti-aircraft artillery, fighting off kamikaze attacks, or a half-frozen survivor of a torpedo destroyer in the North Atlantic prior to Pearl Harbor. He is the soldier who battled the elements in the Bulge during Germany's last desperate offensive. He flew combat missions in bombers, fighters, or many other types of aircraft. He is the local loudmouth, dumber than can be imagined, whose overgrown frat boy behavior is outweighed 100 times in the cosmic scales by 4 hours of exquisite bravery in combat near the 38th parallel. He is the guy next door who served in the muddy rice paddies and froze in the snowy mountains of Korea. He came home as one of the 103,000 wounded in the forgotten victory. She or he is the nurse who fought against futility and went to sleep sobbing every night for 2 solid years in Da Nang. Occasionally, those nightmares resurface even today, many years since their tour of duty ended. He could be the cop on the beat who spent months in the sands of Kuwait and Iraq, sweating gallons a day, making sure that the armored personnel carriers did not run out of fuel. He or she is the father or mother called to active duty to serve in the war on terrorism, far from their loved ones. He is a Quantico drill instructor who never saw combat but saved countless lives by turning slouchy, no-accountant rednecks and gang members into Marines. He taught them to watch each other's backs. He is the parade-riding legionnaire who needs help to pin on his ribbons and medals because of his prosthetic arms. He is the career quartermaster who watches the ribbons and medals pass him by. He is the POW who went away one person and returned a different person, or in some cases, he did not return at all. He is the 3 anonymous heroes now sheltered in the tomb of the unknowns whose presence at the Arlington National Cemetery must forever preserve the memory of all anonymous heroes whose valor dies unrecognized with them on the battlefield or in the ocean's sunless deep. They shall not and must not have died in vain. He is the old man bagging groceries at the supermarket, palsied now and aggravatingly slow, who helped liberate a Nazi death camp and who wishes all day long that his wife were alive to hold him when the nightmares come. He was an ordinary boy or girl, yet extraordinary human being who offered some of life's most vital years, and maybe all, in the service of our country, and sacrificed their ambitions so that others, you and I, would not have to sacrifice ours. He is a soldier and a savior, and a sword against the darkness, and he is nothing more than the finest, the greatest testimony on behalf of the finest, the greatest nation ever known. It is you and I, the lucky ones, the returnees. Hopefully we will be capable and energetic enough to convince those who are not called, convince them, their children, and all of our children as well, that the United States of America is worth fighting for if a fight is upon us. Thank God for veterans. Author, Father Dennis Edward O'Brien, Chaplain, 1st Marine Division. I would now like to introduce Lorelei King.
Good morning. My name's Lorelei King. I was a sergeant in the U.S. Army. Each year at this time, I read a poem in Flanders Fields. Before I begin, I would like to share the context in which this celebrated poem was written. In Flanders Fields was written during the First World War by a Canadian soldier and surgeon, Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. In April 1915, McCrae and a young friend, Alexei Helmer, joined 18,000 Canadian soldiers, in addition to French troops, on the front line at Flanders Fields in Ypres, Belgium. McCrae wrote the following in a letter home to his mother, dated May 10, 1915. We got here to refit and rest this morning at 4 a.m., having marched last night at 10 p.m. The general impression in my mind is of a nightmare. We have been in the most bitter of fights. For 17 days and 17 nights, none of us had had our clothes off, nor our boots even, except occasionally. In all that time while I was awake, gunfire and rifle fire never ceased for 60 seconds, and it was sticking to our utmost by a weak line, all but ready to break. Knowing nothing of what was going on and depressed by reports of anxious infantry. The men and the division are worthy of all praises that can be given. It did not end in 4 days when many of our infantry were taken out. It kept on at a fever heat till yesterday. My clothes, my boots, kit, and dugout were sadly bloody. 2 of our batteries are reduced to 2 officers. We have had constant, accurate shell fire, but we have had given back no less. And behind it was the constant background of the sights of the dead, the wounded, the maimed, and a terrible anxiety lest the line should give way. The commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Edward Morrison, described the scene. My headquarters are in a trench on the top of the bank of the Ypres Canal, and McCrae had his dressing station in a hole dug at the foot of the bank. During periods of the battle, men who were shot actually rolled down the bank into his dressing station. Along from us, a few hundred yards away, was the headquarters of another regiment. Many times during the days of battle, McCrae and I watched them burying their dead whenever there was a lull. Thus the crosses, row on row, grew into a good-sized cemetery. On May 2nd, McCrae's friend Helmer was killed by a shell burst. His remains were scattered all over. Soldiers gathered the remains and put them in sandbags. The burial, just outside McCrae's dressing station, was late that evening. McCrae performed the funeral ceremony in the absence of the chaplain. This happened in complete darkness, for there were no lights allowed. The next day, McCrae inspired to write the poem in Flanders Fields. A young soldier watched him write it. Cyril Allenson, a 22-year-old sergeant major, was delivering the mail that day when he spotted McCrae. McCrae looked up as Allenson approached, then went on writing while he stood there quietly. His face was very tired and calm as he wrote, Allenson recalled. He looked around from time to time, his eyes straying to Helmer's grave. When McCrae finished 5 minutes later, he took his mail from Allenson and without saying a word, handed his writing pad to him. Allenson was moved by what he read. He said the poem was an exact description of the scene in front of both of us. Wild poppies were already beginning to bloom between the crosses, marking the many graves. And they were being blown that morning by a gentle east wind. It never occurred to me that it would ever be published. It seemed to me just an exact description of the scene. McCrae tossed the poem away, but Morrison retrieved it and sent it to the newspapers in England. Punch magazine published it on December 8, 1915. It remains to this day to be one of the most famous war poems ever written, because it echoed perfectly the sacrifices made in the battles on the Western Front. It is read around the world every November 11th. The poem also led to the poppy being adopted as the flower of remembrance for the dead. In Flanders Fields, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Roy Switzler, who's going to speak next.
Good morning, everyone here today. Great to see a good turnout for the 102nd Veterans Day. What I'm going to do is simply to go over what the American Legion here in town, Post 72, has done this week, or actually this month, starting on the 5th of November through the 28th of November. We have 5 store windows in town, and we've had 3 events. One was last evening. If you made it to the movie Midway at the Tailby parking lot, was a great hit. Today is the Veterans Day ceremonies, which we're within at the moment. And at Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 14th of November, we're going to have the Boston Firemen's Band playing at 1 p.m. up the street at 77 Central Street in front of Ravis Realty. That will be going on. They have 2 concerts, one at 1 p.m. and one at 1:40 in the afternoon. And I have on the varying spots that we're in the process of already set up, and we have some hard-working members of the American Legion and the Celebrations Committee who have set it up. we have at Washington Street at number 467 Haskins Automotive. You'll see a World War II Jeep, a Willys Jeep that was used in World War II, along with some camping material showing how people would live outdoors in the wild during Second World War. Going up to Church Street, which is the street next to the village church on its left as you face it from here, we have windows that experienced the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. And then at 24 Church Street, there's military-issued equipment. Much of this equipment, you understand, has come from local people in Wellesley, have set it up. We've used it. You'll see a helmet up there that has been used before by Mr. Barbieri, who since passed on, who was hit by a sniper in World War II. When he bent down to work on his rifle, which was not functioning at the moment, a sniper shot at him, and when he was bent down, the bullet went through the back of his helmet and into his backside, for which he got a Purple Heart. Effectively, that's on Church Street. There are two stores there again, 8 and 22, 8 and 24. On Central Street, there's a military history of any number of people who were involved. You'll see Robert Hinchliffe, who was active in Wellesley in military affairs, as well as being active in the service while he was in for many years, who passed away a few years ago. And you'll notice a lighted up window at 77 Church Street, which is where the band concert is going to be held on next Saturday. I have here a notebook that I'm going to set on top of this pillar over here. If you'd like a flyer, they're green, take one. It's a guide list that you can take and walk around and hopefully have a chance to see the work that's been done to honor our veterans, not only from the Second World War, although as the chairman of the Wellesley Parade Committee, our theme this year was the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. We never did get in the parade, but we're trying to do our part, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to see what was done, and we thank you all for being here today. I'd like to now introduce Joe Oliveri, the chairman of this event.
Folks, at this time, I'd like to introduce Nicole Starck, whose grandfather served in World War II, jumped twice, and I'd like to have her come up and tell a quick story about him. Thank you. It's probably easier to hold
him. Good morning. Thank you, Wellesley Veteran Services, for having me here today. And a special thank you to all the veterans for who we thank and honor every day, but even more so today. My name is Nicole Starck. I grew up in Watertown, and I currently live in Waltham. And while I am not a veteran, my grandfather, World War II Staff Sergeant Burge Avedanian, who served with the 505th Parachute Infantry of the 82nd Airborne Division, is. My grandfather was a first-generation son born to Armenian immigrants. He was born on Flag Day in 1918, and he died on the 61st anniversary of D-Day in 2005. So you don't get much more patriotic than that. He joined the Army at the age of 23, right after the attack on Pearl Harbor. He'd always tell us that right after he listened to Roosevelt's speech, "The Day That Will Live in Infamy," on the radio, he was serving as a manager trainer at Howard Johnson's in New York. And he jumped in the company car and he drove to the first recruiting station that he could find in Lower Manhattan. And he certainly wasn't the only World War II veteran that did that. If you had the honor to speak to any of them, they will all share a similar story of feeling that need and desire to serve and protect our great country after what happened at Pearl Harbor. So even with the bonus jump pay that was offered by the Army, my grandfather took a very big pay cut to join the paratroopers, but the money didn't matter to him. He needed to answer the nation's call. He went on to participate in 7 major campaigns in World War II, including the invasion of Italy, Battle of the Bulge, Operation Market Garden, Operation Overlord, and the D-Day invasion of France. After the war, he stayed along in Europe for the Nuremberg trials, and he returned to the States. He served as a procurement officer for the Veterans Administration in Boston, and he was a contracting officer for the U.S. Coast Guard's North Atlantic region, as well as the AMVET's national commander in 1973 and 1974, serving in Washington, D.C. Most of the memories I have of my grandfather revolve around the countless hours of dedication and time that he put in for his fellow soldiers. I remember spending time at his home, and he would be sitting in his chair coordinating events and memorials with his fellow veterans. He was always planning trips down to Washington, D.C., and he even drove down to the Capitol in 2004 at the age of 85, much to my grandmother's dismay, so that he could be there for the dedication of the World War II memorial by President George W. Bush. My grandfather was so dedicated to fellow soldiers and veterans that he would spend every Memorial Day weekend visiting cemeteries in Belmont, Watertown, Newton, and Waltham, placing flags and personal letters that he hand wrote on the graves of over 150 veterans. He would jump, literally, at any chance to speak, write, or get together with his fellow comrades. While my grandfather was a great family man and loved his children and grandchildren unconditionally, he was always proudest of his military service. He would always say that if God could allow me to be born again, that I would pray that he would put me back on that same road to Normandy. It was the most gratifying thing I have ever done, and I was so proud to be fighting for my country. Through my grandfather, my family and I have had the benefit of experiencing firsthand how important it is to continue to honor and support and thank those who have served our country. He spent his entire post-active duty service life serving and remembering his fellow soldiers. And I thank all of you for inviting me here today so that I can extend my gratitude and appreciation to all of you in person, just as he would have done if he were still here today. Thank you, and happy Veterans Day.
Thank you. I would now like to introduce Nancy Blanchard again for her introduction as the Veteran Service Officer here in Wellesley.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today to honor those who have served, not only the past, but the living veterans as well. On behalf of the West Suburban Veterans Service District, I would like to say thank you to all our veterans and happy Veterans Day. Our office, who is directed by Sarada Kalpi, who is now deployed overseas, has been doing a tremendous job. And now, as she's away, I'm trying to hang on and continue the services that she provided for our veterans. Our office not only provides just for veterans, but their dependents and spouses as well. If there are any issues that our veterans or their families have, our office is here to help, advocate, assist, and provide services and benefits, whether state or federal or both. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Joe Oliveri for putting this event together, as well as the Wellesley Celebrations Committee for putting the November Salute to Veterans Month with their display, their dedication, and time. Also at this time, if you are a veteran, please raise your hand. Thank you for your service. After this event, I have a special little token of appreciation from the 10 Acres Elementary School with support of Kevin Richards from the 3rd and 6th graders. So if you are a veteran, family of veteran, please come see me afterwards. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, the town halls are closed to the public. However, by appointments, I can come see you, assist you, and provide services. I I am at the Wellesley Town Hall, although I do serve 4 towns, Needham, Wayland, and Weston as well. My central location is here at the Wellesley Town Hall. Should you have any questions, need assistance, or can provide support, I can be reached at the Wellesley Town Hall, Veteran Services, and I'll be handing out my cards afterwards. Thank you. Happy Veterans Day, and happy birthday to the Marine Corps for yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Again, for all your veteran services needs, her office is right here behind us. Please stop in and say hello when you can. You know, folks, by the turnout here today, you know, we continue to grow this event year in, year out. Not just Veterans Day, but all the other ceremonies we have here in Wellesley. And without your support and the dedication to the cause, you know, we wouldn't be able to put this together. I mean, thank you to the police department, fire department, all the visitors and families. I know with the restrictions it's tough, but we really do thank you for putting this and helping us put this together. Obviously, thanks to our veterans here as well, the speakers. With that, we're going to close out the event here shortly. But I just wanted to give one more thanks and happy Veterans Day to everyone here. With that, Ben, salute to the dead.
Honor guard. Freeze it. Oh.
At this time, we will wrap the flag, please. Thank you. Folks, I don't know if you can see over this, but at this time we are retiring the POW and the MIA flag. Thank you. Thank you. At this time, I would like to invite Nicholas Cavallero for the benediction.
My name is Nicholas Cavallerano, and I'm a Wellesley High School senior. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, both in your coming in and your going forth, in your laying down and your rising up, in your labor and your leisure, in your laughter and your tears, until you come to stand before him in the day that has no dawn and no sunset. May the Lord be with you. May God bless America and protect our armed forces. Amen.
Folks, with that, one more thanks goes out to our police and fire departments for this display here. Thank you very much to the honor guards for the podiums. The Wellesley Town Hall, thank you very much for allowing us to use this space for the event. There are a few other guests I'd like to thank. Specifically, I'd like to thank Beth Sullivan for really driving this event and putting it together through these challenging times. I'd also like to thank the other selectmen here today, Lisa Olney, Colette Offrame. I'd like to thank the Wellesley Celebrations Committee as well. They've been helpful through this and every event we do here in town. I hope you guys will attend our events and get the flyers and the information for all the events. If you have any questions, please call the town hall. We'd be happy to point you in the right direction. I'd like to thank Nancy Blanchard, again, for all your veteran service needs. Nancy's your person to go to. And the town hall staff have been super helpful putting this together as well. And thank you to all our fine veterans. Happy Veterans Day to you. It's an honor to be beside you here today for this event. And that is the conclusion. Thank you very much, folks, for coming. Again, if you get the time, go up to Church Street here and check out the displays in the windows. There's really great stuff up there that I think you'd enjoy. All right? Thank you very much. Have a great day. Happy Veterans Day, everyone. Thank you to the veterans, police, fire, these wonderful folks behind you. Thank you. Enjoy the day.